Good afternoon, sunflowers, and welcome to Good Journeys Tarot. I am Rosemary, and this is 78 Cards in 78 Weeks, the series in which I share the current card I am working on designing for my personal deck, and all of the things that I'm learning about it. And I want to just take a moment to welcome Tony, who is in the chat, as well as Jonathan. He'll be here next week to talk about the card we draw at the end of today's broadcast. And yeah, they're saying the time change really is working to their advantage. And I wish we didn't do the whole time change thing. And now that I know this, after this series is over and the time changes again, I'll push things to 2 o'clock when I do them. That way I can have all of my friends with me. So good information. I love it when people tell me things that are working for them and not working for them so that I can adjust. As always, I'd like to start the day by telling you what's happening here. I did get 2 things in the mail this week. One was this book, which was on pre-order, called Sacred Gender, and it is by Ariana Serpentine. It's from Llewellyn. I've only read the introduction, so I can't really tell you a lot about the book. But it's a topic that interests me. Specifically, this book is about gender outside of the binary, right? And I guess because Transgender Awareness Week was coming up here in the US, which ends today with the Transgender Day of Remembrance, I kind of had this on my mind and I wanted to do some reading about it. So I grabbed this book. I'll let you know what I think about it in the next few weeks as I read through it. I was supposed to be helping with a ceremony for Transgender Day of Remembrance later this afternoon, but we'll get into why I'm not in a little bit. So that was the one thing that came. The other 2 things came in one package. And that was, as some of you have already seen on Instagram, the package from Make Playing Cards. So I got a pack of their card stock to check out and see what I might want to print my cards on when we get to the end of this process. And I immediately picked out 3 of them and were like, these are great. I will tell you that it's definitely going to be Make Playing Cards card finish. I don't like the gloss or the beta. And as much as I like the idea of eco-friendly stuff, I just don't like this cardstock. It just feels weird, and I think it'll get damaged easily. And so that one kind of went out the window as well. And because I like a more matte type of finish and less shine, the 3 that I settled on are the Professional Standard, the S30, which is actually what the deck I'm about to show you is, and the Standard Linen. And I do like the Standard Linen, but I swear I almost always, without fail, fall in love with the plastic. The plastic's a few dollars more. I definitely will print a copy for myself in the plastic. But I think that most people are going to probably prefer the Standard Linen. And so that's probably what I'll use. So I was excited to finally get this. I'd been holding off ordering it because I wanted to do something else. And that is print this deck. And some of you may have seen it on Instagram. This is my Learning Lenormand, which I did much the same fashion as my tarot deck, in which I used Creative Commons imagery for the images on the cards. But then I actually had a specific layout for the card to help me learn things. Because as I was studying Lenormand, I didn't find what I was looking for as far as like a deck with keywords and with the card, and if they had keywords, they didn't have the card notations or that type of thing. There is a deck out there with the keywords in the background, the Under the Roses, which I have a copy of but can't find since I reorganized my office. But I could never see the words in the background, and so I had to get something else to learn with. So based on all of my learning from a book and from Kelly Fitzgerald and from Tony Poole, I put the deck together. And so it looks like this. It's just the image and then the number, and then there's the card and the name and some keywords. And then the borders are all different. depending on the card. So, like, they designate whether it's a positive, negative, or neutral card generally, or in some cases, like with the ship, it might be positive, it might be neutral. Um, and so it turned out really well. It's very pretty. I'll show you a few of the cards. Um, and I will post a link on my website once I get the second run of it. I had to reprint it because one, I really hate the tuck box. Where did I put the tuck box? I tore it the first time trying to get into it. And I'm like, yeah, no, tuck box doesn't work for me. So what do you guys think? Would you prefer decks that are just shrink wrapped, or do you like it when people go through the trouble of designing a tin or a box for you? I guess would be the question. But they're pretty simple images. I tried to be consistent with the style of art that I chose. And yeah, I was very happy with how it turned out. The cross had the wrong card designation on it when it finally got here. I don't know how that happened because my master file was correct, but the image I loaded on Make Playing Cards was wrong. So I have reprinted that. I did go through and actually use whiteout and a Sharpie to correct it on this deck so I could play with it. And instead of the tuck box, I ordered the plastic hinged box to see how I liked that. So sure, just give me your thoughts on how you like to get cards from Make Playing Cards, whether shrink wrap's better or a tin, or how you like them, before we get to printing that tarot deck. But yeah, I was very excited about this. I created this 2 years ago, and I just kept putting off printing, keep putting off printing, and I finally did it. So I was excited to have it in my hot little hands. Yeah, yeah, equal parts love and hate with check boxes. Yeah. And Jonathan Daly has a 10 for his Lenormand. So yeah. Oh, and I'll have to check that out. Jonathan Daly mentions the Learn Lenormand on Etsy. Yeah. All right. So now we can get into today's card. Unfortunately, my special guest had to cancel due to more important things. And so we will be doing this solo, but I do want to invite those of you who are here, if you would like to share a childhood memory or thoughts on the card as I'm talking about it today, to do so. So I'm going to put that little link in the chat for you if you want to hop in and chat with me about the card. We are talking about the Six of Cups. And now, here's the crazy thing. My weekend has totally not been the Six of Cups. It has totally been the card before this. It has been the Five. And here's the cool thing about that, though. So the Five of Cups is that card where we're only recognizing the things that are going wrong, right? So I've been filled with anxiety all weekend because, well, the event I was supposed to do this afternoon, they only told me like an hour ago where it was going to be and when it was going to be. And I'm like, how do you expect anybody to even show up to participate if you haven't told the people doing the event when and where it's going to be until the day of? So anyway, and then of course there was the cancellation for this, among many other things that have just stressed me out all weekend. But the great thing about that is the sixes, if you look, are here at Tiferet in the halfway point of the Tree of Life. And so this is where we begin to disconnect a bit from the world. In fact, Malkut is the only one of the Sephira on the Tree of Life that Tiferet is not connected to in some way. And we begin to see more harmony and beauty and balance. That one extra cup in our Six of Cups takes us from that place of feeling like everything is wrong to finally having a balance. There are 3 cups spilled, there are 3 cups upright, and now there's a balance. We can start to notice the things that are going right as opposed to just the things that are going wrong. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on for the rest of today anyway. as we do this. So let's look at some of my favorite versions of the Six of Cups. The Smith Waite version is described as two children in an old garden, and that's about all that Waite says about it. A lot of people will make a lot about this person over here on this side, but Waite never mentions him. So we'll look at that when we talk about symbols and the past, present, and future and whatnot. But a lot of decks do follow that idea. Here is the Slow Tarot, two children in a garden. It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I love this Curious Travels one where we've got these two little girls and one's helping the other with her hair. And you still have the cups with the flowers in them in the sun, making it look like they're outside. It's very sweet. And we get that idea of childhood, of innocence, that type of thing. This one from the This Might Hurt is more in the city. But again, there's a child or children. I'm trying to judge. Yeah, I think one's just a little bit older than the other. And they're in a garden. It's a terrace garden or a balcony garden, but a garden nonetheless. It's very pretty. But a lot of people will update this card with like a memory, right? Like something that is unique to them. Because that's what this card historically has been about in the Tarot de Marseille, as well as the Smith Waite. And so we get cards like the Lightseers with the person remembering their puppy and the time when they were both still kids. It's such a sweet card. It really is. And also, this one from the Modern Love, that reminiscence of what used to be, right? This woman seeing herself reflected as a child. And sometimes we forget that there's still that child in us, no matter how old we are getting. There's still things that that we hold to from those days. There's still things that make us go, oh, and wonder and that type of thing. And in the Fyodor Pavlov, this was the card that he says he struggled the most with creating. It took him a long time to figure out what to do with this card, because his childhood wasn't didn't have that sweet, innocent, happy moment in the garden that you see in most cards. And so this is what he finally came up with, which is actually him with a child there, and they are lighting lanterns, and it's a really pretty picture, definitely a sense of nostalgia. I don't know why, but I love this old man in the Bone, Stone, and Earth Flesh with the flowers. It kind of reminds me of that King of Cups I showed you from my photo of the day with my dad holding the roses, and he's got the flowers for his young wife, right? Who has gone before him. He's actually going to place them at the grave. He's having a moment of nostalgia and memory as he takes flowers to her as she's going before him, kind of thing, which is really sweet and pretty. Now, when you get to the Golden Dawn, the ideas of this card, they called it the Lord of Pleasure. Our 5 is the Lord of Lost Pleasure. Our 6 is the Lord of Pleasure. So that one extra cup, that little bit of happy emotion coming in and balancing things out. And Crowley kind of goes the opposite direction with pleasure, right? And he talks about fertility, about sensuality, and all of those more adult themes in pleasure, which this card could really be about both. And there are some cards that are Thoth inspired that go with a more adult idea. Here's the Lost Hollow. And here is the Urban Tarot, which I just love this deck. I wish it was tarot size instead of big, but it is a lovely deck. I love how they depict things. But there's a compromise there, right? You can still have pleasure in things innocently, right? there can still be an innocence to even those more adult moments that bring us pleasure. I really love how it's depicted here in the Saucer of Bito. The flowers kind of emerging from the person. They have this like childlike wonder of the things that they are experiencing, the pleasure that they're finding in them. And yeah. Yeah. Lots of good conversation going on. If anybody wants to pop on and say hello and share a memory or talk about the cards, feel free. Love to have you. Um, and I can remember to change my banners. It's one too many things going on for me, isn't there? All right. The children of innocent pleasure is what the Tarot of the Twirling Hands calls it. And I kind of like that idea, innocent pleasure, as kind of a positive idea for this. This deck is really beautiful and striking with the black and white imagery. And I love how she has named the cards. And I've been meaning to email her and ask her where she came up with her names, if she just pulled them out of her head or if it's from somewhere that she studied. I'm going to save the rest of the cards for a minute, other than this one. This is the last one I'm going to share. This is the Memory Keeper from the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation. In fact, this card didn't really change a lot from the first edition to the latest edition. It was always the baby phoenix and dragon from the Lovers and the Devil card, and all the Six Cups. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this is she associates these Six Cups with specific things in her deck. And let me share that screen with you. This is actually directly from her guidebook, just so you can see it. These are the things she associates them with. These are the pleasures that we can find in this card, the memories that can be brought to us. They can be about love and passion, about good fortunes, fame and glory, hope, honors and distinctions, or joy and cheer. And this is one of the cards in her deck where you can actually do this additional divination or exploration of what the card has to say to you in addition. So each cup represents one of these aspects or things that your memory might be about or that you possibly need to be reminded of. And I like that she connected her 6 in the minors with her 6s in the majors, which was an interesting take. And the fact that these are infants versus the adults that appear in the major arcana is really cool too. All right. Let's see. Let's look at some of the symbols in the card. And as always, I'm taking out my tarot disassembled. And she pulled out all kinds of things here, which, when I look at it, I just think about, okay, these 2 kids in the garden and it's nostalgia and that type of thing. But I mean, look at all of these different things that she pulled out. She pulled out, oh, look at that. There's the house in the background. You've got the mittens, the sandals, all kinds of things. And what's interesting, the one that most people focus on is that man right there. A lot of people think that this man is the one having the memory of his childhood in this old village or garden, that's him handing the flowers to his beloved. And there's this whole idea that this is a scene from a play that Pixie was familiar with. And it was actually unrequited. But it was still that sweet moment of giving. And some people will actually see that idea of giving or receiving when they look at this card because of how it's depicted here with handing the cup of flowers from one person to the next. This is a card that always bugged me in the Smith Waite because I felt like these figures were awkward. Like, they look disproportionate. Like, I couldn't tell if that was a short little old lady or if that was a child. and then, looking at the one next to them going, okay, yeah, what is this relationship going on? And I love it. I love it. Yeah, you never pay attention to it, and then you can't unsee it once somebody talks about it. That happens to me every week when I'm studying the cards. There's something somebody points out that I really hadn't thought about. And a lot of people will associate this card in a reading with the past, present, and future. So this being the present, the memory that you're having, and then this side over here where the man is, whatever's nearest to it is the past, right? Because he's remembering his past. And then this is him having the memory, and then this would be the future, what's coming next. And so there's this idea from some that upright, it is about the past, but or present, but in the reverse, it's actually about the future. So it's something that is to come, good things that are to come. And we'll talk a little bit more about the reverse in a minute because there are three very different viewpoints, okay, on the reverse of this particular card. But I want to look in the guidebook here and see what she has to say about the symbols that she chose, because she pulls out some really interesting symbols that I never would have thought about. Let's see. Yeah, so I never would have thought about the house in the background being a place of security and comfort and family, but that's totally equated with nostalgia, and definitely with the upcoming week here in the US with Thanksgiving. Many of us think nostalgically about the meals that we had and the times with our families, even when there were other things that weren't so pleasing in our life, right? The mittens. So the mittens remind her of childhood and of warmth. In the Secrets of the Smith Waite, that's actually one of the clues that they had to this being a specific person from a play, was the white mittens, because this person always wore white mittens. Let's see. So some people, when they look at the man, they see him holding this. They call it a spear. Some people call it a walking staff, and some people call it a spear. And those who see it as a spear see it kind of as that idea of being guarded or there being protection. And really, that's what this card is. It's kind of like our best memory of things. It's we're protecting ourselves from the bad things that are going on, by remembering the good things, so to speak, in a way. Which brings us to something that Crowley had to say about this card. Crowley said, "This is the best card in the pack." And the idea being that this is totally about pleasure. There is no pain. You're safe. There is nothing going wrong. This is all good stuff, right? And so that's why some people, when they read it, they'll read it upright or reversed as good things, either from the past or in reverse from the future. But other people will address it differently. And we've mentioned how this card is about innocence. We've mentioned nostalgia and memories, giving and sharing, child things. But also there's this aspect of courtship. As I mentioned, there is this unrequited love, this man giving this woman flowers that people reference from a play when they look at this card. I've always thought of these as children, but even as children, sometimes there is that kind of courtship aspect, right? Boys have crushes on girls, vice versa, and they'll give them little gifts at Valentine's or Christmas or whatever as an expression of their affection. And so there's that idea of courtship. Now, in reverse, I've talked about how some people see it as a positive future versus, say, a positive past. But then other people look at it as, say, kind of like maybe not a good thing. Like maybe you're stuck in the past. Maybe you're living in the past, or you have a false memory of something. Maybe it's something that you are remembering incorrectly, that you're thinking more positively of than you should, or even more negatively than you should, because there are those things that we tend to have a very pessimistic view of, that when we learn the whole story, we realize, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was actually better than we thought. I place naivety here. For me, there's a difference between innocence and naivety. So for me, innocence is that childlike wonder of experiencing new things. And then naivety is, okay, you're overlooking something, right? You're not getting the big picture, the full picture. You're not having a complete understanding. So I kind of see that as a shadow side. And I see Tony has popped in the background. So welcome, Tony.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, did you have some thoughts about this card or a memory you wanted to share?
Oh, well, I have just quickly grabbed a few cards because,
Oh, cool.
to share. And I think what I put in my very first take with this card when I started learning, I went with the rose tinted glasses. I can't remember what deck I must have got that from. I think there was somebody wearing them in a deck, and that was, it stuck, it resonated. So it's always kind of that, are you looking at life through rose tinted glasses, or do you need to take them off and actually, truly look around and smell the roses rather than admiring them with a lens?
Right.
And then as I've kind of moved on through life, I've stuck with that meaning, but some, the harmony, the idealisms, those sorts of things usually come into play for my general take.
Sure. Absolutely. So, what cards did you pull out?
Okay, so Poppy Palin, Everyday Enchantment, the Six of Cups. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog drinking.
Oh, no, it's fine. Oh,
Because
lovely.
it's got a really good that feeling of life in it.
Mhm.
What's going on now, like very modern take today, much like the Light Seers and the preview I've seen of the card that you might be showing later.
Okay.
So I thought that one was a great card. And I don't know, do you have the Unfolding Path?
I do not.
So much like the Bone Stone, this one just reminds me of that sort of passing down, handing down, teaching of tradition and ritual with the six here. I've really enjoyed that element of this card, and of course the one in the Bone Stone. I mean, that one is, I think Jenna said, soul, the soul card, the soul deck in
Sure.
comments.
Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah, so
absolutely.
that was a couple of the ones I have.
Oh, cool. Wonderful. Thank you for popping in. I'm so happy to see you. And you're going to be back with me again soon, aren't you?
I think, yeah, it's going to go
Yeah.
quick, isn't it? About a month?
I think it's in
4
December,
weeks?
just a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Tony actually was with me during the anniversary event, and there were so many of us that I didn't feel like she had enough time to talk about cards, so I wanted her back. So looking forward to that. So what are your thoughts on the shadow side? That's what I've been talking about just now. Do you
So the
read
shadow
reversal?
side, I read balanced.
Okay.
So because I do enjoy reading pips as well. So
Okay.
I read kind of both sides at once when I do a card. I don't have to have it upside down to read that. It can be upright and I can still tell you the bad stuff. So yeah, I'm a more balanced reader when I do the cards. So it doesn't matter if a card is upside down in my spread. I will upright them all and read them as I kind of am drawn to read when it
Yeah.
comes to them. But the shadow side is definitely, I think, perhaps the over idealistic approach to life, isn't it? So by idolizing things and putting things on pedestals, the disappointment that can come with that, and that I suppose goes back to my remove those rose tinted glasses and have a look at what's actually around you. But it's easy to do that, isn't it? We do it with love all the time. When you put your first love, you put them up high on the pedestal and you admire them, and I don't want to ruin this moment and things. So I think we all get trapped in that.
Sure.
And feel it ourselves, don't we? Occasionally there's probably elements in life where we were that first love, maybe somebody else, or the infatuation. And it's interesting how the tables turn. Like, how did that make you feel?
Right.
Have you ever had
Absolutely.
that happen to you?
Um, Probably. I'm not a very relationshipy person, so I've never been one of those who feel like they have to be in a relationship, and when it's over, I'm like, okay, well, it didn't work out. Let's move on. I'm not. Although I do know there are other people like that I dated that like I guess don't want to move on. They're like, oh, we can still be friends. I'm like, well, yeah, no, that's done. We're gone. We're in different places now. I'm done with you. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I get that.
Yeah. But now there are still people that I dated that I'm friends with to this day. They're like my best friends. But there's some that I'm just like, yeah, no, that was a time and place, and I don't really want to be around you anymore, kind of thing. So,
And yeah, and that is another thing, isn't it, with like this journey of life. Not everyone's there to take us all the way all the time, are they? So some people are designed to help us along stretches of the path, and they're a companion for that period of time, and they're not meant to go any further. And that's sometimes that's a hard thing to learn, isn't it?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
sad as well sometimes. And other times it can be a godsend.
Absolutely. Yeah, this idea that this card is associated with memory and knowledge lends itself to another shadow aspect that maybe there are lots of things that we don't know, right? Maybe there are things that we're forgetting or we're not seeing. That kind of, we have the rose-colored glasses and we don't see the things that are wrong in the picture. With Crowley's view of the card, there's also this idea of the excess of pleasure, kind of moving from the idea of the lovers to the devil. So associating again with the sixes and the major arcana upright, more of a lover's energy, that happy, joyous kind of memory, to the devil, more of a being bound by our own pleasures kind of thing. And I wanted to talk for a minute about, we looked at the Tree of Life and talk about how some people associate this card with the access to the Akashic records, because our water suit is often associated with our emotions and our spirituality, and the sixes are there in Tiferet, which is where we first come in contact with that which is beyond the earthly plane. And so I thought I would mention that for those who are interested. This is the card that is the sun in Scorpio, and in her book, Corinne Keener says basically, the sun shines light on everything, and basically gets rid of all of that negativity and makes everything happy again. Because typically we think of Scorpios as those who are like overly emotional and a little bit of an intense energy, and but the sun like brightens the day, so to speak, brings the joy, and I liked what she had to say there about that. So should we look at what I did?
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see what your final decision was.
Well, here's the interesting thing. When I started to do my reading this week, I already had a full page of notes. Apparently, when I had the idea for this card, which is here in pencil, which is going to there, you can't really see it, but I'll describe it. It's basically the same image that I created later, which were two children playing in a river that was at its lowest point during the year, and it's a specific scene in my neighborhood. We lived in the country, but in what was intended to be like a homeowners association, like a planned community. And so there had been a park, and then there had been a community house by the river with a dock and concrete steps going down the hill to the river. And of course, there was no plan and no HOA fees or anything like that to pay for that stuff. So over time, they all deteriorated and fell apart. So, but we would always go swimming at that one spot where the steps were still there going down into the river. And during the summer, the water would be like anywhere from 4 inches to a foot as the river went down during the hot summer. And so we would enter the river there and just play, and without our parents most of the time. And in fact, as we got older, we would like start there and we would just like swim for like a mile down the river to another swimming hole past our houses and everything, and then walk back up the highway to our house. And And so that was a memory of my childhood that I cherish, and I
Mhm.
wanted to see depicted in this card. And so apparently when I designed this card last year or so, I went through and I did all of the studying back then. And so I had this very specific idea, which let me share my screen again. All right. Which ended up being this image of two kids jumping into the water. I never could figure out how to make it look like my neighborhood with the concrete steps going down into the water and all of that. So I just did it this way. Um, and then I was looking at some cards, and I'm just going to unshare this for a minute to show the cards. Um, and I was looking. Oh, wrong cards. These cards. So I was looking at this one from the Lightworkers deck and by Terror Skills, and it is of actual film,
Mm.
photograph film, and it got me to thinking about photo albums and how we keep our memories. This was another one from the Transient Light that got me to thinking about how we pack away our memories and pull them out later and that type of
Yeah.
thing. And actually, I when I originally was creating my first deck of my photo of the day cards, it was actually my childhood toys, which I still have. They're downstairs in my living room on a shelf. I would say one of them is actually from college, which was still a long time ago, but the rest are still from when I was a little tiny kid that I still have. And so and also another one that I kept out to show you is this one, which reminded me of mine. Was these children playing in the water here in the New Era Elements, and they call this card happiness,
Yeah.
which is definitely an idea that comes across here. Happy
That
memory.
one that one reminds me of my nan lived in London. I used to live there as a young child. Then we moved, and I used to go back and visit. And she had a park a couple streets away, and they had, because it's all built up. There was no such thing as streams and lakes to play in, but they had a very shallow pool, probably about ankle deep, not deep at all. And I just remember it being really big, and everyone in the heat would go in and stand in there or sit in it just to cool down. And there was a big fountain in the middle that used to kind of like sprinkle water on you. So that card really reminded me then of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so I began to think, well, how do we look at photographs today? Well, most of the time it's on our phone, right? And people will use things as their background that are special to them, whether it's their lover, their children, their dog, those kinds of things. And so I thought, well, that would be an appropriate, like, modern way of depicting a memory would be the photo on the phone. And my initial thought was to be looking at it, right? Because we're actually thinking about this memory. And so I used these hands, and then everybody in the Good Journeys into Tarot Facebook group, which you should check out if you haven't, guys, was like, yeah, it doesn't really fit with the rest of your deck. And I had even done different versions of the hand. And on Tony's suggestion, I think it was, I even zoomed in to maybe see if that would be helpful. And the hand wouldn't be such a bother to everyone. But I also decided to try it without the hand for everyone. And so I decided what would it look like if it was laying on your nightstand or on your table or kitchen counter or whatever. Because your phone would still have that fond memory on it, that image, that background that you chose to remember. And then I went back and I did darken the phone up a little bit because I felt like it was a little gray. And so right now, that's what the image looks like. I mean, I still probably could go back and do this one, and it would probably get the point across that this was a childhood memory that I had
Yeah.
out in nature. But I don't know, for some reason, it was appealing to me to see it as a photograph, right? Rather than just in my head, something that I wanted to keep around.
Yeah, the concept as well that you said, because that's where our memories are now kept in this day and age. Somebody wouldn't pull out a roll of photo albums and start showing them off. So it'd be on a phone or an iPad or a moving photo frame, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So the one thing I'm still considering is looking for a different phone image, because to me this looks a little bit too much like an iPhone and not enough like an Android. Um, I'm not an iPhone person, but it really doesn't matter. Generic. I didn't want like a name brand or anything on it. So, but as long as you can tell it's a phone, I think that's sufficient, right?
Yeah, exactly. As long as
Well,
the
thank you
concept
so
is
much.
there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hopping on with me today. And I look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks. Um,
You're welcome.
and so right now we're going to draw the card for Jonathan Daly for next week. Um, and then I can email him and tell him what it is, because, he might forget in 5 minutes, right? I know I do.
Homework,
All
Jonathan.
right. Here we go. Oh, and we're down to 17 cards, so it's getting harder to shuffle. So I'm going to spread them out and just draw one. Oh, I know. Since you're here, pick a number 1 through 17.
8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, there we go. This is going to be our card. It is going to be the 8 of Cups. And so how about that? The 8 is the 8 of Cups. So yeah, so we're going to be moving away from something this week, Jonathan. And so well, look forward to working through that card and figuring out what that one's going to be. It's another one that I thought about for a while, like, what will I even do for that? There's some cards like the one today that I had a specific idea and I was ready to get it on paper and have it done. And then other cards that I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'll do. I could easily, mimic the Smith Waite image, but I've been trying to do things that were personal life events and memories in my deck. And I'm very excited that we're getting closer and closer to finishing it. And yeah, I can't believe how close we really are at this point. Well, thank you so
Not
much for
long.
stepping in, Tony. I'm going to say
You're
goodbye
welcome.
to everybody real quick. And if you want to stick around, we can say hello in a moment. So don't forget, if you haven't already, to check out the winter edition of the Cartomancer, which is currently on sale. My article, The Privilege of Tarot, will be in there. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it ended up looking myself, as well as seeing what other people have to say. And until next time, everybody, good journeys.